Most people think the Bible only talks about prayer, sin, and heaven. But here's the shocker. It actually contains the most timeless financial blueprint ever written. If you've been struggling with money, chasing side hustles, or feeling stuck in a job that barely pays the bills, maybe the problem isn't your work ethic. Maybe it's that you've been following man's rules instead of God's. For centuries, people have believed that faith and finances don't mix. Yet Scripture is full of business strategies, wealth principles, and investment lessons that modern entrepreneurs are still trying to figure out. Think about it. Jesus spoke more about money than he did about heaven and hell combined. Why? Because he knew money would be the test of our heart and the fuel for our mission. If you've ever wondered why some Christians prosper while others constantly lack, the difference often lies in how they apply biblical money rules. These rules aren't about quick hacks or empty motivation. They are covenant principles that have worked for thousands of years, and they'll work in your life if you're bold enough to act on them. Here's the good news. You don't need Wall Street connections, a millionaire inheritance, or a finance degree to apply them. You just need to shift how you see money, business, and your role as a steward in God's kingdom. Once you do, the same Bible that you've read for spiritual guidance will also become your playbook for building lasting wealth. If you like our content, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. Because in this video, we're not just going to talk about saving or budgeting. We're going to uncover 6 powerful biblical money rules that can set you on the path to real prosperity in the next decade. And the first one will completely change how you think about multiplying what's already in your hands. The rule of covenant wealth. True wealth in Scripture is not random, it's covenantal. Deuteronomy 8:18 says, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms His covenant." This means money and business success are not just outcomes of hustle or luck, but proof of a divine promise. When you understand covenant wealth, you stop chasing money and start partnering with God's eternal economy. Covenant wealth is different from worldly riches. Proverbs 10:22 declares, "The blessing of the Lord brings wealth, without painful toil for it." That doesn't mean no work, it means no sorrow. Many chase 6 figures but lose their peace, their family, even their health. Covenant wealth, however, adds abundance with joy. It's prosperity wrapped in purpose, not pressure. In business terms, covenant wealth looks like divine opportunities others can't explain. Joseph went from prison to prime minister because he carried God's wisdom. Daniel prospered under pagan kings because an excellent spirit was in him. Daniel 6:3. Covenant people attract favor in boardrooms, contracts, and investments where logic alone can't account for the outcome. It's not just about what you know, it's about who you walk with. Covenant wealth also sustains across generations. Proverbs 13:22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." That means your money strategies aren't just for your bills today, but for your family's destiny tomorrow. Think trusts, wills, and businesses that outlive you. Covenant wealth multiplies legacy, not just bank accounts. Practically, walking in covenant wealth means aligning financial habits with God's commands. Tithing, wise stewardship, protection, generosity. They are not isolated principles, but covenant practices. They are signs that you recognize God as the true source. When you obey them, you position yourself for blessings no market crash can erase. That's why believers who run businesses with integrity often outlast competitors. But here's the deeper truth. Covenant wealth is eternal. Every dollar stewarded with kingdom purpose becomes treasure stored in heaven. Matthew 6:20. That doesn't mean neglecting growth here on earth. It means letting your earthly growth echo into eternity. And once you grasp this principle, you'll never look at money the same way again, because wealth is no longer just income, it's inheritance. The rule of generosity. In God's economy, giving is not loss, it's multiplication in disguise. Luke 6:38 declares, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap." Generosity may seem counterintuitive in business, but it's the very strategy that opens divine doors of provision. While the world teaches us to hoard, Scripture teaches us to release. And in releasing, we make room for increase. Generosity is not just about tithing, though that is foundational. Malachi 3:10 calls us to bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, promising overflowing blessings. But beyond tithes are offerings, strategic acts of generosity toward people, ministries, and even employees. Imagine being an entrepreneur who doesn't just pay wages but invests in staff development, scholarships, or community impact. That kind of generosity creates loyalty and respect, but more than that, it invokes God's favor. In practical finance, generosity breaks greed. Many wealthy people collapse under the weight of selfishness, but those who practice generosity stay light and free. John D. Rockefeller, one of the richest men in history, started tithing as a child when he earned only $1.50 a week. He later said that had he not learned to give on small amounts, he would never have been able to give on millions. Generosity disciplines the heart and trains it for abundance. Generosity also attracts networks and opportunities. Proverbs 18:16 says, "A gift opens the way and ushers the giver into the presence of the great." Strategic giving in business, whether supporting a cause or blessing a partner, creates influence that money alone can't buy. Doors open for generous people because others see them as trustworthy and abundant. Stinginess repels, but generosity magnetizes. Even in investments, generosity has a role. Many Christians today are exploring biblically responsible investing, BRI, choosing funds and stocks that align with godly values. In this way, even where their money multiplies, it also serves kingdom purposes. That's generosity on a systemic level, building wealth while protecting values. True wealth is not about how much you accumulate, but how much impact your resources create. Ultimately, generosity is the antidote to fear. The world says, "If I give, I'll have less." God says, "If you give, you'll never run out." Elijah told the widow in 1 Kings 17 to give her last meal, and in return, her jar of oil never dried up. That's divine economics. But generosity doesn't end the journey, because after giving, we must remember the ultimate source of all wealth, the covenant of God, the rule of wisdom in business. The Bible never separates wisdom from prosperity. Proverbs 24:3 says, "By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established." In business, wisdom is not optional, it's survival. Many people rush into ventures because they want to make money fast, but without discernment, they end up with losses instead of profits. Wisdom protects you from haste and aligns your business decisions with God's timing. Wisdom means asking questions before signing deals. In Joshua 9, Israel was deceived by the Gibeonites because they failed to seek the Lord's counsel. How many entrepreneurs today fall into bad partnerships for the same reason? Business wisdom says, research the market, pray for clarity, and analyze the numbers before committing. This is not hesitation. It is diligence. Fast money without wisdom is slow disaster. Practical wisdom also shows up in mentorship. Proverbs 15:22 teaches, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Entrepreneurs who isolate themselves make costly mistakes. Those who surround themselves with godly mentors, financial advisors, and seasoned business people multiply their odds of success. Reading books like Good to Great by Jim Collins or studying biblical models like Solomon's trading empire adds layers of wisdom to every decision. Another form of wisdom is timing. Ecclesiastes 3 declares there is a season for everything. Sometimes the difference between profit and loss is simply entering too early or too late. A wise entrepreneur discerns not just what to do, but when to do it. In today's world, that might mean waiting before investing in a volatile market or seizing opportunities in undervalued industries when others are distracted. Wisdom also manages risk. Jesus himself said in Luke 14:28, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it?" That's business planning. Risk isn't eliminated, but it's calculated. You don't bet your family's future on speculation. You build step by step, anchored in foresight and prudence. At its core, business wisdom is about aligning earthly strategy with heavenly vision. It's the combination of spreadsheets and scripture, prayer and planning, contracts and covenant. When you operate like this, money doesn't just serve you, it testifies of God's faithfulness. But wisdom, to be complete, must be balanced with a heart posture. Because business without generosity becomes greed, and that leads us into the next rule, the rule of protection. Money is a seed, but every seed needs protection. In the Bible, Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem not just for beauty, but for defense. In the same way, your finances need walls to keep enemies out. Proverbs 27:12 says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." Protection is the invisible shield of wealth. Without it, everything you've built can vanish overnight. Practically, this begins with avoiding destructive debt. Credit cards with 20% interest are not convenience, they're slavery. Proverbs 22:7 warns, "The borrower is servant to the lender." Imagine multiplying your income but watching it evaporate into monthly payments. True wealth is not just about how much you make money, but how much you keep from leaking away. Protection means saying no to traps disguised as opportunities. Insurance is another layer of biblical prudence. Joseph prepared Egypt with grain reserves for 7 years of famine. Today, wise people prepare for health emergencies, property risks, or unexpected loss. It's not fear, it's foresight. A medical bill without coverage can wipe out a lifetime of stewardship. Protecting your assets allows you to focus on building, not rebuilding after disaster. Protection also means guarding against toxic influences. Many fortunes are destroyed not by numbers but by relationships, wrong partners, manipulative friends, or greedy advisors. Psalm 1 warns us not to walk in the counsel of the wicked. In business terms, this means due diligence. Before signing contracts, research reputations. Before taking advice, ask, does this person bear fruit in their own finances? That is spiritual and financial discernment. Another dimension is cybersecurity. Just as shepherds in the Old Testament protected sheep from wolves, today's entrepreneurs must protect data, passwords, and digital assets. One breach can collapse an entire business. Even small business owners should use two-factor authentication, secure banking systems, and data backups. These may seem boring, but boring is what saves empires from sudden collapse. Finally, protection is spiritual. Malachi 3:11 says God himself will rebuke the devourer for those who honor him with tithes. No financial strategy can replace divine covering. When you tithe and walk in obedience, you activate protection that no insurance policy can guarantee. But protection alone is not the end. It positions you to make strategic moves. Once your walls are secure, wisdom teaches you how to expand into business with confidence. The rule of stewardship. Stewardship is not ownership, it's management. Psalm 24:1 reminds us, "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it." That means money, business opportunities, and even skills are not truly ours. They are entrusted to us for a time. The difference between someone who stays broke and someone who builds lasting wealth is often stewardship. God blesses those who prove faithful with little before he entrusts them with more. In practical terms, stewardship means creating systems. A budget is not just math, it's theology and numbers. Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." That means tracking every dollar, separating what goes to tithe, savings, investment, and daily living. Think of a business. No company survives without accounting, reporting, and oversight. Why would your personal finances be any different? Stewardship also requires discipline in spending. Many people pray for a financial miracle but swipe their credit card without restraint. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." In modern terms, that's like consuming your entire paycheck on wants instead of preserving resources for growth. Wise stewardship asks, do I control money or does money control me? It extends to investments as well. A good steward doesn't chase hype or gamble on trends. Instead, he studies ETFs, index funds, even faith-based investments like biblically responsible investing, BRI funds. A steward asks, will this multiply and honor God, or will it destroy my peace? That's why stewardship is both financial and spiritual discernment. You're not just moving numbers, you're aligning with heaven's economy. Stewardship also includes time. If money is wasted, you can earn more, but if time is wasted, it's gone forever. Ephesians 5:16 says, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Managing your calendar is as important as managing your wallet. Successful entrepreneurs block time for planning, learning, and rest, because they know time compounds value the same way investments do. And here's the beauty. Stewardship attracts trust. When banks see disciplined borrowers, they offer better rates. When investors see careful managers, they provide more capital. When God sees faithful servants, he opens greater doors. But stewardship by itself is not enough, because what you guard must also be protected from threats that try to destroy it. That's where the next rule comes in. The rule of multiplication. The Bible never celebrates the man who buried his talent. In Matthew 25, the servant who multiplied what was given to him received praise and greater responsibility, while the one who hid his money lost everything. God never intended for money to stay idle. His design is that it circulates, multiplies, and creates value. Wealth in the kingdom is not a static possession but a flowing river. If you're holding on too tightly, you're stopping the flow. When we talk about multiplication today, it doesn't always mean risky speculation. It can mean diversifying into different streams of income, a side business, wise investments, or even building digital assets that work while you sleep. Proverbs 31 describes a woman who doesn't just buy, she invests in fields and sees profit from her labor. Multiplication is about being strategic, not reckless. Money, when used with wisdom, becomes a tool for freedom. Think about the stock market. Someone who faithfully invests $500 a month into strong dividend-paying companies can, over 10 years, see exponential growth. That's the modern reflection of the parable of the talents. Not everyone is called to trade like Wall Street brokers, but everyone is called to steward what they have so that it grows. Even a savings account with compound interest beats burying it in the ground. Multiplication also applies to skills. The servant in the parable didn't just multiply coins, he multiplied responsibility, influence, and capacity. When you study books on business like The Intelligent Investor or even biographies of leaders like Warren Buffett, you're multiplying your mental capital. This aligns with Proverbs 4:7. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. Wisdom multiplies everything it touches, but multiplication has a deeper dimension, purpose. It's not just about make money for yourself, but multiplying impact for the kingdom. Imagine funding scholarships for pastors, launching a business that creates jobs, or supporting a missionary family because your investments grew. That's the real meaning behind God's blessing in Deuteronomy 8:18. He gives power to get wealth to establish his covenant. The sobering truth is this: those who fail to multiply eventually lose what they have. Just like the lazy servant, people who refuse to grow, adapt, and reinvest end up swallowed by inflation, debt, and irrelevance. Multiplication is both a command and a protection. And once we grasp it, we're ready to unlock the next principle. Because multiplying is only powerful if you also learn how to manage what flows into your hands. You've just discovered 6 biblical money rules that can completely change your financial future. But here's the real question. Will you just nod your head and keep scrolling, or will you actually apply them? The difference between information and transformation is action. The same God who gave wisdom to Solomon is ready to guide your business and your money, but he won't force you to move. So let me ask you, which of these rules hit you the hardest? Was it the call to multiply instead of hiding? To protect instead of wasting? To give instead of clinging? These are not just theories. They're steps that can reshape the way you build wealth, run your business, and leave a legacy. The truth is, nothing changes until you do. If you want a different financial story 10 years from now, it begins with a single decision today. What habits will you drop? What new covenant practices will you embrace? What would your life look like if money no longer controlled you, but instead served your God-given purpose? Write in the comments, "I declare my business will serve the kingdom," and watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. If this message stirred something inside you, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description so we can keep spreading kingdom truths about business and money. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because you don't want to miss the next revelation that could unlock your financial breakthrough.